Hi, welcome to Wonderfully Wired. Today I'm going to be talking about autism and sensory sensitivities. Now, there are two aspects to sensitivity. One is hypersensitivity and the other is hyposensitivity. So, hypersensitivity is when you feel textures, lights, sounds, or any stimuli very intensely. It feels like it's too much. And then hyposensitivity is when there is some stimuli that, say, your body is giving you, you still may not feel it. For example, some people may not be able to figure out cues that their body gives them in terms of hunger and thirst. And sometimes when you're experiencing pain, you may not feel it so much. So when your response to stimuli is low, that would be considered hyposensitivity. Now, people who are autistic tend to have a lot of hypersensitive reactions to stimuli when it comes to visual stimuli or auditory stimuli or olfactory, your sense of smell. Sometimes there's a very strong reaction to what you're able to taste. So in my case, I have very high sensitivity to sound, and I didn't know that about myself. I realized that very recently, like a lot of other things that I've begun to realize after I figured out that I'm on the spectrum. So my response to sounds, especially those high frequency sounds and very low harsh sounds, like the sound of sandpaper or the sound of gravel, it hits my ears very sharply, and it registers almost like physical pain. So it's quite unbearable. And I think people in general may have auditory sensitivities to different things. Everybody will have something that they're not very comfortable with. Sometimes when you pull a chalk down a board, or when you hear like the sound of screeching tires or nails being dragged. So those don't feel comfortable for most people, but there are certain sounds, like even when the television is on, it feels very uncomfortable, and you have to kind of maybe reduce the sound or increase the bass so you're not feeling that high frequency hit your ears. So I do experience a lot of discomfort with auditory input, and I spent all my life just being exhausted because of the amount of input that I was getting through sounds. That's just one aspect. So recently I made a little bit of a change, which has been life saving, which is investing in a good pair of construction uh, earmuffs, those industrial grade construction earmuffs. So this is what they look like. Now when I put it on, it's it cuts out about 50% of the sound, and on some days it's honestly a lifesaver, because when I feel overwhelmed by stimuli, I tend to get irritated a lot faster. My tolerance in general comes down. I'm in a bad mood. So this has helped a lot. And when I go out, I use these foam earplugs. I don't particularly like how it feels inside my ears, but I use it anyway, because dealing with the sound that you hear on the road, the vehicles, the traffic, the constant barrage of sound is just too much for me to deal with. The other, another um, sensory discomfort that I experience is visual sensory input. For example, if the lights are too bright and there's just like if there's visual clutter, there's just too many things kept. If there's a lot of things kept on my desk, I can't function. If the lights are too bright, I can't function. I end up feeling very tired, and I need to physically lie down if I've been exposed to bright lights or even loud sounds for that matter. I physically need to lie down and just completely shut out the world before I can come back and just be a person again. Another thing that autistic people can experience is olfactory stimuli that can be overwhelming. Olfactory is your sense of smell. It can be very unsettling. Certain smells can be very unsettling. And I think the only way, unfortunately, you need to breathe. So, I mean, okay, not unfortunately, but you know what I mean. So, breathing becomes very difficult when the smells are too strong. It could be smell of a perfume or smell of certain foods, or sometimes you can smell the heat. And when the temperature rises, it's like you can smell the heat, and it's just very unpleasant. So that is not something that I've been able to control. I just try to leave the place where the smell is just too much for me. So that's the only way I've been able to deal with it. um, with lights, if I go out, I try to use a pair of shades. If I'm in my house, I try to keep the lights very dull. um, so these are some of the ways that I deal with it. And I realize that I've been sort of weaving, I've been weaving in and out of the different sensory um, response to stimuli. Uh, so now I will talk about textures. So I like soft textures, whether it comes to clothing, whether it comes to my bed covers and blanket. Um, it's just if I'm using a hairband, I like those silk scrunchies. I prefer those because I don't like it when my hands come in contact with anything that's rough. It feels very uncomfortable. And it's for this reason that I also use like a soft toy or a plushie, um, because it helps me feel nice and comfortable. It's very soft. Um, that's one thing. I also don't like getting my hands wet because I just don't. So for a very long time, I also hated doing the dishes, and I just couldn't figure out why I hated it so much. I would find any excuse to not do the dishes. And it was, again, very recently that I realized I could start using, um, these rubber gloves. And also, you get those latex-free gloves, which you can use to do the dishes. So that has been very helpful. Um, so yeah, so sometimes, I don't particularly enjoy the rough texture, that very sandpaper feeling. I don't also, when it comes to like texture, for example, like with my glasses, I don't like wearing glasses because these nose bridge thingies, I don't know what they're called, they're very uncomfortable. And these, um, again, I don't know what they're called. I think this stem, you can feel it in the back of your ears. So during winters, it's still bearable. In summers, not at all. So if I can, I try spending a lot of time taking my glasses off and just keeping my eyes closed and just try to relax. I did try to use contact lenses. Didn't help very much because I can feel it in my eyes. Another thing is using makeup, using um, lotion, face lotion, body lotion, chapstick, lipstick. I don't like it very much. I do wear makeup occasionally, and I like the process of getting ready and dressing up, but I am so aware of feeling the texture of the makeup on my skin. And especially when in summers, you need to wear a sunscreen when you're stepping out. um, I find it very difficult because I can feel the lotion on my face, and it's it's something that I try to ignore sometimes, but it's still hard. mm. And another thing is, yeah, I think this would cover the texture portion of it. Now there is also hypersensitivity when it comes to taste. There are certain foods that I don't particularly like because of the texture. So I didn't think I would have an issue with food because I've never been a picky eater, but I realized that there were certain foods that I'd been eating since childhood, and maybe I didn't have an issue with it then, but now there are certain foods that I just try to avoid because the texture just makes me feel very uncomfortable. So these are some of the hypersensitivity issues that autistic people can experience. Now, when it comes to hypersensitivity, sometimes, like I said, you might have difficulty figuring out, that you're experiencing pain, or you don't know when you feel hungry, when you feel thirsty, when you need to use the bathroom. So these can be some of the things that an autistic person may struggle with. Sometimes it may be necessary for a reminder, maybe just write it down somewhere or set an alarm on your phone to remind yourself when to eat. So, because you need nutrition. So, these are some of the things that I do experience. So, how do I make it a little better for myself dealing with these sensory issues? Um, Luckily, I work from home, so I spend most of my time at home. I have literally no reason to step out of the house, which um, I completely understand. That's very privileged, and I completely get that. It's not an option that a lot of people are able to exercise. Other than that, if you're stepping out of the house, these foam earplugs, very, very useful. Um, you can try getting those noise cancelling earmuffs. Honestly, one of the best investments I've ever made in my life. They're not, in the long run, they honestly, work out, because if you're looking at the usage of your earmuffs, I think it's almost like it pays for itself. So, and also they're not as expensive as what you might think. Another thing is, I tend to carry some fidget toys because sometimes sensory input can make me feel very, very uncomfortable and anxious, and I carry some fidget toys with me. This is a fidget roller. So I think some people have heard of Ono roller, which I personally think it's very expensive, but if you feel that it's worth investing in it, go ahead. I managed to find this on Amazon for a fraction of the cost, and it's basically, it doesn't make any sound. You can roll it between your hands, um, and it's got a nice heft to it, so it feels good to just carry it and just fidget with it. Another thing that I do is, you get those squishy, I think they're called mochi squishy toys, so you can get those. I got this squeezy ball. I think it's got gel inside, and it's quite hard. So this is another thing that I've noticed helps me a lot when I'm feeling like this excess of building up anxious energy and I just need to get that out find that this is a really good way to do it. Other ways that I deal with it, um, if I'm home, I I also have a weighted pillow, which I somebody was generous enough to gift it to me, and it helps placing it on my chest or my stomach or on my lap when I'm really feeling anxious. And you could also invest in um, weighted blankets. You can get those um, lights that are, you've got those dimmer lights. You could try getting those, or just put a dull light in, especially in the evenings. I think as you start unwinding, you might want to have some dull lights. You could do that. I have a lot of soft toys which I like, because it just feels nice when I'm holding something, and it's just like very comfortable for me. So I also tend to carry one with me if I'm traveling. um, it just makes me feel a little safe. I also have an emotional support water bottle which I carry with me everywhere. So something that makes you feel a little safe, like when you step out of the house, you're like, okay, I've got these few things with me, so I feel like okay, I feel anchored. You could try that. Other things you could try is focus on your breathing. If you're feeling extremely anxious, that may not always be possible, so you could try stimming with rocking back and forth or rocking from side to side. This is something I do very often when I'm feeling the need to get the energy out of my body. So these are some of the things that I do. Um, it might also help you if you have a pet that you like to spend time with, and cuddling with your pets uh, feels really nice. I have a dog, and she's not much of a cuddler, but I try to sneak in a little bit of a hug now and then. So having pets will make you feel very, very calm and relaxed, hopefully. um, you can try some of these things, and it might be overwhelming from time to time, but I think it'll really help if you're able to find a way to deal with that overwhelm before it becomes a full-blown spiral, and then you have to, you end up having a meltdown, which sometimes might be difficult to do that if you're in a public place. If you feel a meltdown coming on in a public place, please find a bathroom if you can, and that way, you're able to just sort of contain it within a small space, or try and come back home and try finding a safe space where you can have a meltdown. So sensory issues are something that you may have to deal with a lot if you're autistic. um, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Your nervous system is just wired differently from somebody who's not autistic, and it might take some time for you to find a rhythm that works for you, find the right tools that specifically work for you. And if there's something else that I have missed, something else that you could suggest to me, when I'm experiencing these sensory issues, please let me know, because I would like to have as many tools in my arsenal as possible to keep myself comfortable and not experience meltdowns, because they're quite exhausting. They really are. So let me know what you think, and I would love to hear from you. So have a lovely day, and I'll see you in my next video.